This installment of the series of talks, reflections on passages in Savitri, is called The Masters of the Ideal. And this presentation examines a passage from the canto, The Kingdoms and Godheads of the Greater Mind, which deals with a realm of divine consciousness that overtops our human consciousness and its influences on us and on our world. The passage describes this realm both in impersonal terms of its greatness, beauty, and power, and in personal terms of living gods. It emphasizes our relation with that realm, asserting that it is the origin of the little that we are, and even that we are citizens of that mother state. Adventurers, we have colonized matter's night. The passage illuminates the human being striving for ideal truth and perfection, and enlarges our sense of being and possibility. The passage to be examined is about 3 pages and begins near the bottom of page 260 and extends to near the bottom of page 263. I will read the entire passage in 5 segments, commenting on each segment in turn. The first part describes this realm of consciousness, both in general and in its relation to human consciousness. It begins, "On peaks imagination cannot tread, in the horizons of a tireless sight, under a blue veil of eternity, the splendors of ideal mind were seen, outstretched across the boundaries of things known. Origin of the little that we are, instinct with the endless more that we must be, a prop of all that human strength enacts, creator of hopes by earth unrealized. It spreads beyond the expanding universe. It wings beyond the boundaries of dream. It overtops the ceiling of life's soar. Awake in a luminous sphere, unbound by thought, exposed to omniscient immensities. It casts on our world its great crowned influences, its speed that outstrips the ambling of the hours, its force that strides invincibly through time, its mights that bridge the gulf twixt man and God, its lights that combat ignorance and death." Sri Aurobindo gives this realm of consciousness a label, ideal mind. This is an important term in Savitri which depicts a certain level of consciousness which is described here. We may note also that the next canto is called The Heavens of the Ideal. And there are 2 later cantos in Book 10 that also use the term ideal in their titles, The Dream Twilight of the Ideal, and The Gospel of Death and Vanity of the Ideal. The term is used several times in the longer passage we are considering, and it is used quite a number of times in the poem as a whole, including in its more relevant form with a capitalized first letter, I. It is also used frequently in Sri Aurobindo's prose works, such as the Synthesis of Yoga and the Life Divine. Therefore, we may as well begin by concentrating on the meaning of this term in Sri Aurobindo's philosophy. The word ideal can be used as an adjective to describe something, such as an ideal employee, or as a noun, in which case it means a principle or way of behaving that is of a very high standard, or a perfect thing or situation. In this case, the term ideal could be taken either way, as an adjective modifying the word mind, or as a part of a compound noun, ideal mind. But in both cases, it means a realm or status of mind that is perfect or of a very high standard. And indeed, we're given suggestions that it is a realm of mind that is divine, as it is described as under a blue veil of eternity and exposed to omniscient immensities. This suggests it is an all-knowing consciousness, eternally existent above our ignorant and evolving mental consciousness. We will get further indications of the nature of this ideal mind later in the passage, but in this first part, Sri Aurobindo begins to lay out its powerful, uplifting influences on human life. In simple but highly consequential terms, he says, it is a prop of all that human strength enacts, and a creator of hopes by earth unrealized. This indicates that this ideal mind supports all human efforts, and especially those efforts we make towards our higher hopes, towards our ideals. And at the same time, it is the creator of those ideals. This speaks to the profound difference between the spiritual philosophy and a materialistic philosophy, which sees progress and effort arising through an unconscious play of natural forces, through survival of the fittest, through instinct driving a pragmatic intelligence which serves life survival and reproduction. In this spiritual philosophy, there is a casting down of higher knowledge and power from divine heights onto and into our human consciousness, and importantly, a hidden working of it within us, secretly inspiring and supporting our human endeavors. In the last 6-line sentence of this part of the passage, Sri Aurobindo rhythmically hammers out the powerful influences of this ideal mind on our world. The first lines establish its nature and status, that it is awake in a luminous sphere unbound by thought and is exposed to omniscient immensities. While the third line conveys its general relation and effect on human life. It casts on our world its great crowned influences, its royal or exalted effects. And then in a series of 4 lines, repeating again the first word, its, he lists several of its pervasive and continuous influences driving and furthering the evolution of consciousness towards God. Its speed that outstrips the ambling of the hours, its force that strides invincibly through time, its mights that bridge the gulf twixt man and God, and its lights that combat ignorance and death. The next part of the passage describes in greater detail the nature of this realm of ideal mind. In its vast ambit of ideal space, where beauty and mightiness walk hand in hand, the Spirit's truths take form as living gods, and each can build a world in its own right. In an air which doubt and error cannot mark with the stigmata of their deformity, in communion with the musing privacy of a truth that sees in an unerring light, where sight falters not, nor wanders thought, exempt from our world's exorbitant tax of tears, dreaming its luminous creation's gaze on the ideas that people eternity. In a sun blaze of joy and absolute power, above the masters of the ideal throne, in sessions of secure felicity, in regions of illumined certitude. Far are those realms from our labor and yearning and call. Perfection's reign and hallowed sanctuary, closed to the uncertain thoughts of human mind, remote from the turbid tread of mortal life. In the vocabulary of Sri Aurobindo's metaphysics, this part suggests that the ideal mind is a borderline region between the absolute truth consciousness of supermind and the dividing consciousness of mind, a realm termed in Sri Aurobindo's cosmology as the overmind. Sri Aurobindo has referred to the overmind as the world of the gods. And here he says that in this realm, the Spirit's truths take form as living gods. In Letters on Yoga 1, Sri Aurobindo says, the overmind is the world of the gods, and the gods are not merely powers, but have forms also. And in another letter, he says that the natives of the overmind are gods. Naturally, the gods rule the cosmos. He also says in the letters, the gods are personalities or powers put forth by the divine. They are therefore in front limited emanations, although the full divine is behind each of them. And in another letter, he says, of course, the gods exist. That is to say, there are powers that stand above the world and transmit the divine workings. These descriptions suggest the nature of the plane of consciousness to which Sri Aurobindo refers in this passage. Sri Aurobindo gives us some of the primary characteristics of this realm. These gods live in a vast ambient of ideal space, a vast domain of consciousness, in a sun blaze of joy and absolute power. That is, in a realm of truth vision where no error or doubt can intrude. Their musings, their dreams, create the worlds and populate them with the infinite variety of things and beings. In this realm, perfection reigns, it governs, and it is far beyond the limited and suffering human consciousness with its uncertain thoughts and desires and blind instincts. Although this heaven is high above our earthly existence, it is not unfelt or unrelated. Its influences pour down upon us. Sri Aurobindo explains this in the next portion of the passage. But since our secret selves are next of kin, a breath of unattained divinity visits the imperfect earth on which we toil. Across a gleaming ether's golden laugh, a light falls on our vexed, unsatisfied lives. A thought comes down from the ideal worlds and moves us to new model, even here, some image of their greatness and appeal and wonder beyond the ken of mortal hope. Amid the heavy sameness of the days and contradicted by the human law, a faith in things that are not and must be lives comrade of this world's delight and pain. The child of the secret soul's forbidden desire, born of its amour with eternity. Our spirits break free from their environment. The future brings its face of miracle near. Its Godhead looks at us with present eyes. Acts deemed impossible grow natural. We feel the hero's immortality, the courage and the strength death cannot touch, awake in limbs that are mortal, hearts that fail. We move by the rapid impulse of a will that scorns the tardy trudge of mortal time. The earlier portion of the passage we had read earlier highlighted the greatness of this realm of ideal mind and its remoteness from the human consciousness. This part establishes that there is still a strong connection. In the first line, he says, "But since our secret selves are next of kin," indicating that we are closely related. But the term secret selves is somewhat enigmatic. What is the secret self? We get a clue 13 lines down when he says, "The child of the secret soul's forbidden desire." This secret self is our soul. But our soul is hidden deep within us by the outer layers of our mental, vital, and physical being. Our soul is the divine element within us that has come down from this ideal mind onto this imperfect earth on which we toil, into these limbs that are mortal, hearts that fail. The relation of our soul with this realm of ideal mind will be further clarified in the following segment. But here we are shown one of its most pronounced effects, a faith in things that are not and must be. This faith is the child of the secret soul's forbidden desire, born of its amour with eternity. What is this forbidden desire? It is our desire for the perfection that was described as reigning in the realms of the ideal mind, to establish them here in this ignorant world and in our vexed, unsatisfied lives. This faith in things that are not and must be is called idealism. We believe in and strive to attain and embody ideals of truth, goodness and beauty, of courage and strength, and even of immortality, whether through our physical progeny, the legacy of our mental or vital achievements, or our religious or spiritual identification with God. There seems to be an ongoing transaction that occurs between the realm of ideal mind and our soul, for Sri Aurobindo says that a breath of unattained divinity visits the imperfect earth, and that across a gleaming ether's golden laugh, a light falls on our vexed, unsatisfied lives, and that a thought comes down from the ideal worlds and moves us to new model, even here, some image of their greatness and appeal. Here, Sri Aurobindo repeatedly highlights the contrast between the ideal and the present reality. He does not deny it or sugarcoat it. He contrasts acts deemed impossible with grown natural, courage, and strength that death cannot touch, awakening in limbs that are mortal, hearts that fail, and movements driven by the rapid impulse of a will which scorn the tardy trudge of mortal time. Mankind is continually confronted by its limitations, but it continually persists in pursuing its ideals. And sometimes, even if only at moments or in select individuals, it attains them. And often we have seen instances in which individuals have exhibited extraordinary feats of courage, intuitive knowledge or insight, physical skill, strength or endurance, love, generosity or compassion. There are famous instances of intuitive insights in science. For example, James Watson had a dream of a spiral staircase inspiring the discovery of the nuclear structure of DNA. Einstein had a dream that gave him the idea of the theory of relativity. Niels Bohr had a dream giving him a symbolic image of the structure of the atom with its electrons circling around the nucleus. In music, Paul McCartney of the Beatles woke up with the melody of Yesterday playing in his mind. And Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones heard the opening verse of I Can't Get No Satisfaction during his sleep. Mozart said that the entire overture to his opera Don Giovanni came to him in his sleep. But many of his compositions seem to have come to him in waves of inspiration fully formed, rather than as something he laboriously constructed. The list goes on in other realms of creativity, such as art and poetry. Such discoveries may be connected to the discoverer's conscious thought and ruminations, but it is striking that they often come fully formed in dreams or during sleep, rather than as a logically constructed series of steps. And why do they often come during dreams or sleep? Because in sleep, the outer consciousness, with its logical and more outward directed attention, is quiet and withdrawn, and the inner consciousness, in which the soul is centered, is active and prominent. This is why a concentrated effort at remembering our dreams can be both interesting and helpful in our lives and spiritual progress. But these transactions between the ideal mind and the soul and earthly consciousness do not occur only in exceptionally creative incidents or moments, but they occur regularly in everyone's lives if only we would take notice and become receptive to them. I think that many of us have had experiences in which we have had an intuition that a certain unexpected event would happen, or were inwardly warned against some course of action, or were inwardly moved to make a particular decision, or inwardly moved to speak some consequential words. We also may have experienced moments of remarkable courage or deep emotional empathy or generosity, or of some physical ability or skill which surprised us. We usually explain away such occurrences as natural things born of our own mind, but we are not actually aware of how such experiences arise in us. Indeed, Sri Aurobindo and the Mother say that even our everyday thoughts and feelings come largely from the atmosphere around us. And if these deeper intuitions come only rarely, this infrequency may be due partly to our own blindness and skepticism to the existence of spiritual influences, and partly due to our absorption in the outer world and our transactions with it. I think that the truth of the matter is that to a great extent, the main process of spiritual growth is learning to attune ourselves to these promptings from our inner soul and to the higher reaches of the ideal mind, so that they may work in us constantly and unimpeded by our clumsy mental thoughts and blind vital impulses. In the next part of the passage, Sri Aurobindo describes more fully our relation with this ideal mind. These promptings come not from an alien sphere. Ourselves are citizens of that mother state. Adventurers, we have colonized matter's night. But now our rights are barred, our passports void. We live self-exiled from our heavenlier home. And errant ray from the immortal mind accepted the earth's blindness and became our human thought, servant of ignorance, an exile, laborer on this unsure globe, captured and driven in life's nescient grasp, hampered by obscure cell and treacherous nerve. It dreams of happier states and nobler powers, the natural privilege of unfallen gods, recalling still its old lost sovereignty. Amidst earth's mist and fog and mud and stone, it still remembers its exalted sphere and the high city of its splendid birth. A memory steals in from lost heavens of truth. A wide release comes near. A glory calls. A might looks out, and estranged felicity. In the first segment of the passage we read earlier, Sri Aurobindo briefly indicated that this realm is the origin of the little that we are. And here he elaborates on this idea. He describes our relation with it using the simile that we are citizens of that mother state who have adventured into the darkness and ignorance of matter in order to colonize this physical domain of existence. And that now we are self-exiled from our heavenlier home. And that now our rights are barred, our passports void. Our souls have left the heavens of the ideal mind and ventured into this material world voluntarily. Our human mind is like a ray of this immortal mind that has dived into earth's blindness and become caught in its grip. It has become captured and driven by the ignorant gropings of the life instincts and desires. Rather than being an omniscient master of its environment, it has become a servant of ignorance and a laborer on this unsure globe. But because our souls have come from this divine realm, we still carry some deep memory of it. It still remembers its exalted sphere. And sometimes a memory steals in from lost heavens of truth. These memories are not exactly mental memories like we may have of our childhood home, but soul memories. Our mental memories are relatively more accessible because our mind is more accessible than our soul, which is hidden deep within. These soul memories may arise in our consciousness more vaguely, less frequently, and come more as feelings than as clear mental thoughts or images. They may come as feelings of peace, or a causeless happiness, or a sense of holiness, or a feeling of love and total acceptance, or a depth of compassion for our present travails or those of others. They may come in many different forms that are intimations of something true and beautiful and not quite of this earth. And at the same time, they do not often come in their absolute purity. They often come mixed with things from our outer consciousness that dilute them. We may morph them into something associated with our outer thoughts or emotions or desires. But in addition to these particular or momentary memories of higher states of being, there is a more pervasive influence of our connection with this realm of ideal mind that was suggested in the earlier portions of the passage. And that is a general orientation of our being towards a more ideal state of being, towards progress, towards the development and refinement of our being. This orientation is unmistakable in general human progress and in the many fields of human endeavor. Well, I think most of us also have it in our individual lives. Even though it may get diminished by our outer consciousness or diverted into limited channels, such as for professional development or the seeking for greater wealth or the seeking for greater pleasure or leisure. This general orientation of our being towards a better state may in part derive from this vague memory of an ideal state of being which we're trying to recover or recreate. As Sri Aurobindo suggests in the last lines above, the influence of the ideal mind seemed to come to us both as a kind of a call from above, perhaps from the higher reaches of mind, but also as a kind of vague feeling from within, an urge that presses towards divinity from deep within our soul. The last portion of the passage further describes the relation of this ideal mind with our limited human consciousness and how the former affects us. The first long sentence describes the human mind, which derives from the ideal mind, recovering its divine status. And the last three sentences further describe the contrast and relation between these two statuses of mind. In glamorous passages of half-veiled light, wandering, a brilliant shadow of itself, this quick, uncertain leader of blind gods, this tender of small lamps, this minister serf, hired by a mind and body for earth use, forgets its work mid crude realities. It recovers its renounced imperial right. It wears once more a purple robe of thought and knows itself the ideal seer and king, communicant and prophet of the unborn, heir to delight and immortality. All things are real that here are only dreams. In our unknown depths sleeps their reserve of truth. On our unreached heights they reign and come to us in thought and muse, trailing their robes of light. But our dwarf will and cold pragmatic sense admit not the celestial visitants. Awaiting us on the ideal's peaks, or guarded in our secret self unseen, yet flash sometimes across the awakened soul, hide from our lives their greatness, beauty, power. Our present feels sometimes their regal touch. Our future strives towards their luminous thrones. Out of spiritual secrecy they gaze. Immortal footfalls in mind's corridors sound. Our souls can climb into the shining plains. The breaths from which they came can be our home. The first sentence here is composed of two parts separated by a semicolon. The first 6 lines describe the normal human mind, and the latter 5 lines describe what it becomes when it recovers its divine status. Sri Aurobindo first describes our human mind as wandering in passages of half-veiled light. The full light of the ideal mind is partially veiled, so this human mind is a brilliant shadow of that higher light. He describes it as a quick, uncertain leader of blind gods. Our human mind is quick but uncertain. It often makes mistakes and it is never completely sure of anything. Because its knowledge is incomplete, what it fails to know may at any time alter what its incomplete understanding thinks it knows. This is why in science we speak of theories and probabilities rather than certainties, and why its theories continually change as new information and knowledge are accumulated. Sri Aurobindo says that it is a leader of blind gods. This seems to refer to the mind's guidance of the lower life, with its blind, unthinking desires and impulses. Just as Sri Aurobindo has described the ideal mind as having truths that take form as living gods, the realms of the lower mind and the lower life also have their gods. And the human mind is a leader of these life gods and their influences on our human life. In practice, we use our mind to guide our life, to channel our life forces into productive and regulated actions. He describes our mind as a tender of small lamps, a minister serf. A serf is a servant, and a minister serf is a servant carrying out actions for a higher power, a kind of middleman. Our human mind is like a middleman between the higher ideal mind and the lower life, driven by its desires and instincts. It hires this ideal mind and uses its light to guide the lower life. And the full light of the ideal mind is lost in this work amidst the crude realities of the lower life. In the second part of the sentence, Sri Aurobindo describes what can happen when our human mind can quiet itself and open up to the pure working of the higher mind. Then our higher mind recovers its true working. It becomes again like a king, a strong and powerful leader, becomes a seer of the ideal, of the divine realities, and can communicate its truths. It becomes a prophet, can see into the future and express what is to come in future time, what is still unborn. Moreover, it becomes an heir, an inheritor of the delight and immortality of the divine reality. In the next sentence, Sri Aurobindo says that in this ideal mind, all things are real that in our ordinary human mind are only dreams. It suggests that our ideals of a life based on truth, goodness, and beauty are there fully realized, not merely wonderful hopes for the future or fantasies, but the very nature of things. We dream of these things, for they seem unreal. But these dreams come to us because they already exist deep within us, in the hidden layers of our being, and manage to rise to our surface consciousness as vague but wonderful glimmerings of possibility. They reside deep within us in secret reserves of truth. And up above our human mind, in the ideal mind, they reign sovereignly. They rule its existence, and they sometimes pour down from there into our human mind in thoughts and musings, as intuitions, revealing their greater spiritual light and reality. And then in the next sentence, Sri Aurobindo says why these visitations from above our human mind and these surgings from within usually cannot penetrate into our surface awareness. It is because our dwarf will and cold pragmatic sense do not allow them entry. Dwarf will suggests the will that either does not aim high enough to strive towards realizing these higher promptings, or it is too weak in its striving. It may strive sometimes, but soon falters and settles for easier things, perhaps for the fulfillment of superficial physical or vital desires, or perhaps for some mental expression of the higher ideals, but not their realization in the life of the person. We may become content with reading about such ideals or with writing or speaking about them, but when it comes to actually integrating them into our life and changing, we do not have the requisite determination and perseverance, the required sincerity and commitment. Cold, pragmatic sense refers to the penchant of the mind towards practical physical realities, rather than ideals. It is the opposite of idealism. Ideals seem to this practical mind as unrealistic, impractical, illusory dreams, merely hopes and wishes that cannot be fulfilled. It is doubtful of their truth or possibility because it sees their contradictions in the outer apparent reality. It is cold in the sense that it will not entertain these future possibilities long enough to make them real. It turns away from them and fixes on only what it knows and sees, on only what it can touch and feel with its physical senses. It has no feel for subtleties, for the nuances of things, for the deeper truths behind the outer appearances of things that may be pressing towards expression, but have not yet broken through to the surface, into physical manifestation. It is rigid. It does not like to deviate from the observable facts of things. It gets wearied by philosophy and poetry and contemplative music and intellectual abstractions. These things seem to it superfluous, unimportant distractions from the practicalities of living in this world with its many physical challenges and opportunities. Living in this age of physical science, we all have this pragmatic sense to some extent. It feeds our doubts in our higher possibilities, our lack of ardent faith in the power of the divine to realize them. And in the last sentence of the passage, Sri Aurobindo tells us in the first two lines something about the influences of the ideal mind on our consciousness. He says, "Our present feels sometimes their regal touch, and our future strives towards their luminous thrones." In these lines, he again points to their royalty, their ruling greatness. In our present stage of development, we can sometimes feel their regal touch, their royal influence. We feel their greatness, perhaps even their divinity, that they are not ordinary, but something great and wonderful. When he says that our future strives towards their luminous thrones, it suggests that our future is moving towards that greatness and power. Their regal power is leading us towards that higher status of divinity, even though we may be unaware of it, even though we may be absorbed in the outer world and its pursuits, even though we may resist their influence. And perhaps in another sense, it suggests that in the future, we will more consciously strive to embody the ideals of this ideal mind in our lives and in our world. While at present we may not be aware of them and only occasionally feel something of their influence, in the future we will consciously strive towards the very source of that influence, to the very thrones on which these gods of the ideal mind are seated. And the next two lines of the sentence are intriguing and wonderful. Out of spiritual secrecy they gaze. Immortal footfalls in mind's corridors sound. It suggests that from their thrones high above our human mind in the realm of ideal mind, its gods are looking down on us in our world. They are fully aware of our present predicament, our troubles and suffering, our weakness and our ignorance. And they are not oblivious. They are leading us to their thrones, but under the conditions of our present status. They do not just wipe away all our difficulties in a single wave of a magic wand, but they help us through the difficulties until we become free of them. Immortal footfalls in the mind's corridors sound, suggest that their influences and help can be heard in the corridors of our mind. Remember, our human mind is like a ray that has descended into the darkness of the ignorant world from that ideal mind in order to colonize it, to bring it into the divine realm. There is a passageway between that ideal mind and our human mind. And through that passageway, the influences of this ideal mind descend into our minds. These influences from above include the various ideals that human beings have and strive for in life. Ideals of truth, of freedom, of goodness, of beauty, of love and compassion for others, of generosity and self-giving towards the greater good of all. They may include the sense of oneness that binds all beings and things, that the earth is one living being of which we are just a part. They may also include a sense of the divine, of a greater existence of which we are a part. They may include a sense that we are being guided and helped in our lives by a higher power, that we are being led to a greater future. And the final two lines of the passage assert the full implications of our connection with this realm of ideal mind. Our souls can climb into the shining plains. The breaths from which they came can be our home. We can rise into the plains of the ideal mind. We can live in that consciousness of truth and power and delight. As Sri Aurobindo said earlier in the passage, we are citizens of that mother state who have colonized matter's night. Although now we live self-exiled in this ignorant world and have forfeited our passports, we can regain entry to our home in that realm of mind. Indeed, that is what we have come here to accomplish. We have come to claim this earth and its life for the divine. Although this is a long and difficult adventure, and we may not accomplish it in one lifetime, we are certain to achieve it in the end, for we are being guided and led by the omniscient light and invincible power of the divine above. We feel its influences on our life, and its force supports all our striving towards its greater ideals, which it has revealed to our minds. Of all the ideals which mankind has envisaged and towards which it strives, none is as comprehensive and wonderful as a divine life in a divine body here on earth that has been put forth by Sri Aurobindo. And none has been so vividly revealed in its nature and process of realization. Well, thank you.